The material contained in the Diverging Clear Podcast is for informational purposes only. The ideas and opinions expressed in the podcast does not represent the views or missions of the National Rail Passenger Corporation or Amtrak or the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. This is the Diverging Clear Podcast.
Approach Diverging, milepost 20.04. Diverging Clear, milepost 20.06. Welcome to Diverging Clear, your transportation podcast, with your hosts William Moore and Jermaine Walker.
Final episode, Season 2 ended 2022. Let's get it. Welcome to Season 2 finale of the Diverging Clear Podcast. 2022 year in review. I'm your host, William Moore. And first, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in. And also, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button for this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and any other platform that you listen to or watch your favorite podcast. So let's go ahead and get started. 2022, what a year. Good and bad. I can't lie. This has been one of the toughest years in my life. And it's been an emotional roller coaster. The highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I first want to dedicate this 2022 year in review episode to my mom, Crystal Moore. She transitioned to her heavenly home on Easter Sunday of this year. I cannot stress how much I miss her. She is my biggest fan when it came to the Diverging Clear podcast and also my technical consultant. She was always the first listener and gave me feedback. She also was an awesome confidant when it came to the project with EME Rail Solutions. She often helped me see the big picture when it came to certain aspects of it. I would call her on my way to work at Amtrak, excited about different positive developments with the project. She was so proud of the work I was doing. She knew that it was God that put me here to do what I am doing. She saw when I was almost kicked out of the railroad industry for nothing more than doing my job as best as I could do it. So, Ma, I know y'all got YouTube up there. And this episode is dedicated to you and also to Leslie Garrett, my cousin, aka Beans. Love y'all and miss y'all. This is 2022 with y'all not here, y'all transitioning. It's been very difficult, but just want to say I love y'all. Season finale is dedicated to y'all. Y'all take care of each other up there. Say hi to Papa, Mama, Paw, say hello to everybody. Tell them we all thinking about them. And let's go ahead and get this this season finale cracking and wrapped up. But I miss y'all. Love y'all. Let's get this going. So we're going to talk about some of the trending items here to close out 2022. A couple things I'm going to talk about here leading up for closing out 2022 and going into 2023. One of the big things that was came out of the forced contract that Congress and ultimately the Biden administration forced upon the railroad workers. But at the end of it, you saw that the railroad employees did not get their paid sick time for the BLET SMART, which represents the conductors and yard masters, the maintenance away and signal, all of the crafts that currently don't have paid sick time. You started to see some of the stockholders, some of the class ones in particular, the NS and the UP, where they were starting to wanting to have the company start implementing additional sick time for these crafts and for these employees. They saw the value in it as seeing that the supply chain can't move if you don't have healthy employees. As much as they are cogs in the machine, if you don't have any cogs, you can't move the machine. So I guess from one perspective, that was something that was different that came out of the labor negotiations. And so some of the railroads are actually starting to listen. I can at least know that the CSX is starting to adjust their attendance policy. It's not what they were asking for, but it's at least an acknowledgement that these employees are human beings, which is, I guess, is a better step than where we've been sitting here for the last 150 plus years at the railroad. So CSX is taking a positive step in adjusting their attendance policy, at least acknowledging that the need to adjust the attendance policy so that they can actually have people to run their trains. So that was one of the positives out of it. UP is also starting to take a look at some different things. I don't want to quite speak on the expediter thing that they're trying, ground-based conductors, basically utility men that follow trains, until I at least see some hard data on it. I know some of the sentiment that's coming out of the industry, which, like I said, I would rather see the results of the trial that the UP is going to conduct with this program to see how it works out, but we'll see how that plays out. But like I said, UP is looking at this expediter type thing when it comes to the ground-based conductors, where conductors they say it will have a better quality of life for the conductors, because they'll have a set schedule, they'll have a set sorry about that, it's late night here. They'll have a set schedule, be able to return home every night, 5 days a week. So we'll see how this pilot program goes. It sounds like it's getting a lot of pushback from some of the conductors at the UP when they initially heard about it. But I'm at least fair to say, at least let's see the results and make a determination on whether or not they should continue with the program. Some of the other railroads kind of been a little silent from the BNSF as far as adjusting their attendance policy. Been a little silent from NS on whether they're going to implement new things. They've been being pushed to do it, but haven't heard anything solid with that as far as that goes. One interesting tidbit that came out of it was when CSX and some of the other places was asked about it. CN and CP, they said that they are going to abide by what was collectively bargained, and any adjustments to the attendance policy they will make as they see fit. But as of now, they're going to abide by the current contract that was enacted by Congress and signed off by President Biden. So right now, CP and CN are saying we're not adjusting our attendance policy. It is as it is. So Doesn't surprise me, but we'll see how that carries out. But I can tell you this, north of the border in Canada, they have a better PTO time and sick time than we have south of the border. So just something to keep in mind. One of the other things trending right now is a story that came up on CNBC concerning the East Coast ports. I thought this was interesting to bring this up towards the end of the year. On CNBC, state of the excuse me. Take a drink here. All right, so CNBC State of the Freight, their section here. Story titled, East Coast ports, including New York, are winning a domestic trade war at the expense of California. Some of the tidbits from this is key points. It says, Port of New York and New Jersey tells CNBC has moved the most containers among U.S. ports for the fourth straight month. California ports concede they will need to work harder to gain back trade after labor disputes led shippers and carriers to migrate cargo throughout 2022 to ports including New York, Virginia, Maryland, and the Gulf Coast. Rail freight on the East Coast has doubled that of West Coast to the benefit of CSX and Norfolk Southern. So the story opens up saying the official container count may not be out, but the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey tells CNBC it will be the number one port moving the most containers in the U.S. for the fourth month in a row. Unresolved port labor negotiations and the AB5 trucking law, which concerns employment status of drivers, have migrated trade away from the West Coast to East Coast and Gulf ports, cementing what seems to be, with each month more likely, a permanent shift benefiting not only the ports but East Coast warehousing as well as the two large railroads that service the ports, CSX and Norfolk Southern. According to ITS Logistics, which monitor rail cargo trends, the volume of freight moving out of the East Coast doubles that of the West Coast. The port is working extremely hard on making the most attractive port for ocean carriers and cargo shippers. Richard Cotton, the executive director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, told CNBC. So one of the things it's showing is that basically the way that the East Coast is over the past, I would even say go as far back as 10 to 12 years, probably going all the way back to 2008, they have been they were preparing for the widening of the Panama Canal in conjunction with the construction that was taking place there. The East Coast ports, when you think of Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, New York, those ports were also heavily investing in their ports to be prepared for that shift, where the Panama Canal will be able to handle these bigger ships, and the East Coast ports were actually ready for those ships when they started traversing the widened Panama Canal. So through steady investment over the past, like I said, I'd say all the way back to 2008, maybe even sooner, the planning and the actual implementation of getting these East Coast ports ready has led to this shift from the West Coast import dominance to the East Coast being able to handle those same type of ships and handle it with all of the congestion and the different issues out there in California, being able to handle it more efficiently. I mean, it was saw a couple stories where there were ships that were coming that would normally go directly to Seattle or Tacoma, and they were actually choosing East Coast ports, and then basically the NS and UP would run the cargo from the East Coast ports back west for destinations in Washington, just to avoid the congestion. So when you have that situation presenting itself, and with the infrastructure in place and ready to go, and I'll be honest with you, NS has been doing a pretty damn good job handling intermodal, especially here in the past year and a half. This is the result of it. So when you see these type of things going on, this is why it's important to not invest for the current conditions, but to invest for the future conditions. So when you see what the East Coast ports did, it said Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland, Virginia, all the way up the entire East Coast, and even down to the Gulf Coast, everybody was preparing for this. It was inevitable. And the thing is that they were well suited for it. The planning over the years, what they saw, what the future needs were going to be. They planned, they executed, they invested, and now they're seeing the fruits of their labor. So this is just kind of, to me, I like to look at this as the way that this was handled is the way that all of our infrastructure, transportation, logistic needs should be handled. Shouldn't be handled looking at what the current conditions are. It should be handled and what the future is going to hold, and how we're going to decide to move. How we're going to decide to move our goods and different things. How we going to decide to move them. So with me saying that, I just kind of allude to some of the projects that's been on the drawing boards in the Midwest, some places out west. Don't think about the current conditions as to why these projects should or should not go forward. Look at it as preparing for the future. Because one thing I say about the forecast, especially what we're seeing on imports, and even as far as our domestic containers, this was forecasted. What's taking place was forecasted. Now the pandemic did push a lot of this stuff to the forefront, but a lot of this was forecasted. And with it being forecasted, we're seeing that forecast come to fruition. But our infrastructure, our planning, our especially on the rail side, I don't think is quite up to speed where it needs to be to handle our future needs. And let's just be honest with you. Climate change is going to affect how we look at our logistics network too. Whether you're a climate change believer or not, it's going to affect how our logistics network operates. When you look at right now, the Mississippi River is at its lowest levels, I think, in history. What's going to happen if we can't move barges up and down the Mississippi River? I mean, it was becoming more and more apparent as the shipping season wrapped up towards the end of 2022 that the Mississippi River was in trouble, especially on the northern part. So what are we going to do with all of that? What are we going to be able to do if the Mississippi River isn't available? If those shipping channels aren't available, how are we going to move them? We got to prepare for this reality. It's not a doom and gloom scenario. We're seeing it happen. I mean, look at what happened at Lake Mead. Lake Mead would take 30 to 40 years to recover from where it's currently at right now, with good weather, which is not seem like it's going to be getting anytime soon, with the proper rainfall and snowfall falling in the upper Rockies of Colorado and those areas that feed the Colorado River. So we're having a similar type issue that's taking place on the Mississippi River and contributing channels, and we had to prepare for that. So I just like to look at what the East Coast ports did, and we need to apply that to all of our national infrastructure, our national logistics network, in order to be able to move things, because our typical ways of operating are not going to stay status quo moving forward. So just with that being said, that's kind of my take on it. One more thing that the article talks about is the CSX and Norfolk Southern and rail expansion. It says CSX continues to see East Coast ports as a growth opportunity as volume shifts from congested West Coast gateways, says Cindy Shield, CSX spokesperson. Broad assets are underway, she said, to expand all aspects of the port container handling capacity across the eastern seaboard. On dock rail capacity increases, inland port investments, new marine terminals and terminal expansion, dredging, as well as near dock transload facilities. All these developments will benefit CSX. There's a high degree of correlation between port TU throughput and our intermodal. as well as carload rail volume, Shield said, adding that the interest from port authorities and other stakeholders in inland port container initiatives are also on the rise. So that's CSX speaking on the effect it's having on there. Norfolk Southern says strategic corridor investments and the opening of a dozen new intermodal facilities since 2014 have created the capacity and productivity to support volume growth on our network, said Ed Elkins, Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer. As the global economy becomes even more reliant on the East Coast for supply chain needs, we see a great possibility for smart, sustainable growth. So that's the NS and CSX's take on that. Like I said, they talk about the amount of intermodal facilities the NS has opened up since 2014, and they're now, like I said, seeing those markets grow because they invested. They saw what the forecasts were, and they weren't afraid because of different factors to invest in those facilities, and now they're seeing the fruits of their labor paying off. Now, one thing that's interesting when it comes to what's going on at the ports is this is now describing what's going on at the West Coast. So it says, same article here, says cargo volumes on the West Coast remain soft as the port of Los Angeles in November, which saw a 21% decrease year over year in volumes. Overall, the port moved 7% less cargo in the first 11 months of 2022 compared to last year, which was an all-time record. Imports into the United States have begun to level off, in addition to cargo that has shifted away from the West Coast ports due to protracted labor negotiations, said Port of Los Angeles Executive Director Gene Soroka during a media briefing on Thursday. In the months ahead, we're going to have to work harder and smarter to earn cargo back. Every ship, every train, every truck needs to be handled with top-level service our customers expect and deserve. The trend of trade continued to move to the port of New York and New Jersey over Los Angeles can be tracked in FreightWaves sonar charts, which shows the upcoming vessel capacity. So I'll show this chart on I'll put up a display showing this chart, but basically what it's showing is that West Coast is getting their butt kicked right now. Some of it is their fault, some of it isn't, but the fact of the matter is that the East Coast ports are outperforming the West Coast hand over fist right now, and that's what the trends are showing. So to wrap up that story, they just talked about the import and export and import volumes handled at the U.S. ports. It is down a bit, but like I said, the East Coast has seen tremendous increase in their volume when it comes to as compared to where Los Angeles, Long Beach, LAX, that whole facility is currently handling. So right now I'm gonna take my first break on the podcast. Once we come back from the break, we'll discuss what's ahead for 2023. This is a closeout of 2022, this first portion, and the second portion will be what's ahead, what's going to happen for 2023. So stay tuned. Here's a message from our sponsors, and I'll see you back here in a second.
Diverging Clear is sponsored by EME Rail Solutions, LLC. We don't own rail cars, locomotives, or tracks, but if you do, we provide cutting-edge solutions to maximize your assets. Visit us at emerail.net to learn more. Diverging Clear is also brought to you by Three Kings Freight Brokerage, LLC. Visit threekingsfreightbrokeragellc.com to learn more about their services.
The Diverging Clear Podcast is also brought to you in part by Precision Logistics, LLC. Precision Logistics LLC, meeting tomorrow's logistical needs today. Visit www.precisionlogisticsllc.info to learn how.
And welcome back to the Diverging Clear Podcast, Season 2 Finality, 2022 in review. Don't forget to click the like or subscribe button for the podcast. Available on YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, Apple, and any other platform that you watch your podcast on or listen to your podcast. So yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this episode up. I don't want to keep y'all too long, lose y'all interest, you know what I'm saying? So, what's ahead for 2023? One of the big talks in the economy is, are we heading for a recession? Most of the time, you don't know you're in a recession until after you're coming out of it. But I'm going to say right now we are more than likely in a recession. Just from some of the financial trends and some of the different things going on. And what effect was this recession have on what I talk about all the time, the railroads and the transportation networks? It's hard to tell, but it sounds to me like there's going to be a different approach to how the railroads handle this recession. Typically, when we hear recession in the railroads, we typically see furloughs or layoffs of employees. You see some of the other things come to fruition, but primarily you saw furloughs or layoffs. This time, I think the railroads are going to take a different approach. I hope that they do. This is something I kind of screamed about in 2008 during the Great Recession, is that they cut too many jobs. And when the traffic came back, which it always does, it always rebounds. It's never been a time that the traffic has not recovered. By the time the traffic recovered, there wasn't enough people to move the traffic. And then the railroads ended up kind of shooting themselves in the foot because the traffic returned, but they couldn't handle it. So I think this time, even especially with the way the pandemic was handled, the PSR over the last 7 to 8 years has decimated the workforce, and they've been in a massive hiring type thing or hiring cycle now, that the railroads aren't going to just discard those employees because one, they were already short-staffed, and number two, the amount of investment, the amount of time it takes to get people acclimated, qualified to do the job. So I think this time, and I know it was an article, they talked about it at the Rail Trends conference, that they were talking about that they was going to take a different look at how they approached a recession, or how they approached what they were going to do moving forward as far as employee retention. Maybe have people do different things or qualify different, but they're going to take a different approach. I'm just hoping that actually stays, that they actually hold their word to it and do that. That way, that when this economy rebounds, which it will, it always does. Never been a time it hasn't recovered, that they will stick to their guns and have people ready to go when that traffic picks back up. So we'll see what happens with that. I think that's going to be the big effect that it has on as far as the railroads. And what else will 2023 hold? One of the big things I think is going to be coming up in 2023 is going to be a decision finally being made on this KCS merger. I believe the STB, the clock is ticking on the STB to make a decision on this proposed merger. So that's going to be something that we'll be looking probably sometime in early February, late January, early February. We may have a decision from the STB on that proposed merger. That one's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. my personal opinion on it is that they will approve the merger. I don't know if they'll put any conditions on the merger like they did with the CN when they when they acquired the EJ&E from Transtar/US Steel. I don't know if there'll be some type of conditions placed upon the merger, especially in the Chicago area. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So, but that's something that we'll probably also be looking at 2023 is that merger, whether it's going to be approved or not. One of the other things I want to talk about is the infrastructure bill. Now there's just billions of dollars sitting and waiting to be distributed for different projects regarding that money that was allocated from the infrastructure bill that passed earlier this year. It's going to be interesting to see how that money is divvied up and distributed, and how much closer are we going to get to having possible national high-speed rail network, or at least some corridors identified. They have released, I believe there's been another NOFO notice of funding opportunity. That's what a NOFO is. Sorry, I kind of make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about. But issue for another round of funding and grants for corridor identification and studies for high-speed intercity passenger rail. So that was another interesting thing. You still have the 2022 awards are outstanding for the MEGA program and the CRISI program, both which had those applications that were due in. I believe the MEGA was due in the July, and I believe CRISI was due in May, or it might have been vice versa. But those two programs, the applications are due now. We're just waiting on to hear what projects get awarded those different funding opportunities. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Amtrak has already gotten a couple billion to update and upgrade some of the infrastructure on the Northeast Corridor, which is very much needed. Don't get me wrong, some of that infrastructure goes back to the Civil War, in particular thinking about the Baltimore and Potomac tunnel, the BMP tunnel, goes back to pre-Civil War. So much needed money on the Northeast Corridor, definitely, to keep it get it up to a state of good repair. But there's billions more dollars that's available for different infrastructure programs, and be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, to be honest with you, I'm going to diverge from, just for a quick second, away from the infrastructure money for as far as rail networks, logistics networks, and everything like that. I would like to see some of this infrastructure money go to cities like Flint, Michigan, Jackson, Mississippi, heck, even Chicago, where our water infrastructure is crumbling across the nation. When I say crumbling, it's either got lead pipes, there's lead in the water. It's our water infrastructure needs to be updated ASAP. And I name off Jackson and I name off Flint because those cities are still without clean drinking water. And there was a report that came out, I think I want to say it was back in early October, where they were talking about the number of leaded service lines that's in service in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, in the city limits of Chicago. Over 400,000 homes still have lead service lines. That's not good. So just a quick divergent. I hope some of that money starts getting allocated in that direction also, because we've neglected our infrastructure. Like I said, our water systems, our transportation systems, our logistics systems, our schools. We've neglected so much of that over the past, let's just be real, since probably about the 70s, that we are due to update much of this infrastructure, and it needs to be something that's paid attention to. So I hope some of that money gets allocated that way or starts making some dent in some of this backlog of infrastructure that we need to have taken care of. So that's something else that we'll be looking at in 2023 here. That's going to be trending is where is this infrastructure money going to start going, and what programs and what infrastructure will be invested in. We should hopefully start getting some press releases here in the next couple weeks at the first part of 2022 to see where this money actually goes. And let's see. One of my favorite topics, PSR. What is 2023 going to hold for PSR? For those that don't know, but most of us in the rail industry do, precision scheduled railroading. Is it dead or is it dying, or which one is it? We're starting to see a lot more trends towards the latter, that it's dying. Kind of a slow death, but it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Maybe they'll rebrand it, remarket it as something else. But I can tell you this, the way this last labor contract played out, I think a lot of people have been put on to what PSR has actually done to the workers, to the logistics network. And I always tell people, it did do some good things. You have seen a better utilization of power, but at some point during that, the implementation of distributed power, they got rid of too many units. And so that was a negative, is a positive and a negative. And just the overall staffing and just the overall lack of customer service, lack of realizing why you are here, how you make your money. So that'll be interesting to see how PSR is, I guess, either implemented or rolled back. Like I said, don't get me wrong, there's certain aspects of it that was excellent, but there was too many negatives where the shippers were left at the whim of not what the shippers needed, but at what the railroads were going to provide. That was one of my biggest. I was part of the EJ&E when the CN rolled PSR out onto the EJ&E territory, and I saw more rail customers either close or shift shift to trucking as a result of PSR, and for the most part, it was by design that they did that. The way that our service levels were, the way that our car levels, the way that we handle empties and loads, and I just, for me, that just rubbed me the wrong way, because I just didn't think that we were legitly trying to compete with trucking. It was almost like we were conceding certain traffic to trucking because it didn't fit what the PSR model of CN was at that time. Now CN has gotten better. They have become more supply chain oriented, which I will concede that they have shifted away from what they were doing before, and now more so focused on the supply chain needs and how they can better serve that. But boy, I can tell you that between 2009 and about 2012, 2013, we chased so many customers off of that old EJ&E territory. I was like, this ain't it. This isn't a positive for the rail industry. And as we saw, as the years continue to roll along and more PSR, you saw the benefits of PSR was being realized by the top, the stockholders, and not by the shippers and stakeholders, internal stakeholders, employees. The different departments were kind of left to the wind. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, especially with the recession coming too, or with us being in either close to a recession and a recession, it'll be interesting to see if PSR is dead or if it's dying a slow death. But we'll probably have more updates on. I will have more updates on that as that continues to move forward. The last thing that I think I want to cover that's going to be trending for 2023 is there was an interesting article I read about the shift in global manufacturing from China. And what it was talking about in particular was the many of the manufacturers that utilize China as its main manufacturing base has started shifting to other countries, not necessarily the United States, but have started shifting to other countries. Their manufacturing. So this article was on the Insider, and some of the places that it was mentioning where they are shifting their manufacturing out of China to, one country was India, another country is Vietnam, Thailand is also another place that's starting to see where manufacturing is moving out of from China, moving to Thailand. India is another country where you're seeing the manufacturing shifting to. And the last one was Bangladesh. So with those, but this is also not an overnight thing either. It takes a while to get manufacturing capacity up and moving, but there has been strong investment in those entities that I just named, where the companies are what they call the FDI, foreign direct investments in those countries has risen significantly as they prepare to move some of the major products you can think of, Nike, Apple, Samsung. Some of these places, some of these multinational companies are moving their manufacturing out of China and distributing it to these other countries. I saw a couple other articles. Every time about Saudi Arabia was starting to become another place where some of the manufacturing in the Middle East, so where some of the manufacturing was shifting to. So what does that mean for rail traffic? To be honest with you, only thing that's going to change the volumes of the rail traffic is going to be the amount that they ship, the volume that they ship, because it's shifted to those countries still are going to require it to be shipped to the U.S. So it's not going to have an overall effect by them shifting to those other countries. It's not going to have an overall effect on rail volume that's handled at the ports, because it's still all got to come through the ports since it's being offshored. But what it may do, it may just as I was talking about the previous story with the shift to the East Coast ports, it's not going to affect the current trade trends. Either way it goes, those imports are going to come through the ports of either on the East Coast, West Coast, or Gulf Coast. So the shift in manufacturing from China is not going to have a detriment, a huge detriment to rail volume. The rail volume is going to be determined by the economics and the economy. It's not going to be determined on where the different goods are being produced at. That's not going to affect. It's not going to have much of an effect on the volume as you would think, because like I said, at the end of the day, it still has to come through the ports. So it's just going to be a matter of how much comes through the ports. It's not going to matter where it's coming from. That's just kind of my take on it. Some of the other things that I'll be looking at 2023, will be looking at one thing that'll be interesting is watching as the Montana Rail Link rolls back into the BNSF fold. I'll be interested to see what type of capital projects are taking place in this 2023 capital year for the BNSF, and see how they beef up or bump up that Montana Rail Link to be able to to help facilitate movement on the Northern Transcon there. So that'll be interesting to see. You'll probably maybe start seeing those investment numbers maybe sometime in the beginning of in the first quarter here of the year. One of the other things we'll be looking at is continue to look at how the railroads handle this attendance policy. Will they self-regulate and implement some type of paid sick time off of these employees? That'll be interesting to see how that plays out also. So right now, that's my outlook for 2023. It'll be interesting to see how things shake out with this quote-unquote recession. Also going to be interesting to see how this inflation plays out, because that's going to play a huge role in the recovery from quote-unquote the recession. I know shipping costs have dropped tremendously over the past quarter. Some of the shipping lines are sidelining some of their ships because there's just not enough volume. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, what shipping rates, what domestic or international shipping rates go for. They said they have dropped significantly from what we saw this time last year. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But that's pretty much it. That's kind of my outlook for 2023. Just watching how some of these things play out. Also, just to see how the state of the nation goes with this infrastructure money, this legislation that was passed and that allocated this money, to see, do we truly start moving towards developing a high-speed rail network? So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to in 2023. One, I want to say thank you all for tuning in to season 2 of the Diverging Clear Podcast. It's a bit of a rough year this year, but do want to say thank you for everyone that's taking their time to listen to my podcast, share it, and everything else that's going on. Season 3, I will get back to you and let you know when that one will be dropping. Probably going to take a couple months off, probably January, February, unless some good stuff dropped, and I'm going to go ahead and drop another episode. But probably going to take at least a month off here. Currently in the process of relocating. This will be the last time I shoot from my office here. Like I said, thanks again for supporting the podcast. Make sure you listen and share. Make sure that you pass it on to some of your people, trying to get my subscription numbers up. If y'all have any topics or something, like I say, you can always hit me up at the Diverging Clear Podcast at gmail.com if you got topics or things that you might want me to cover or discuss on the podcast. Don't forget to follow my IG page at Diverging Clear Podcast on IG, Diverging Clear Podcast on Facebook, on Twitter, even though I'm kind of getting away from using it. I'm not all about this must owning it and all that. I've been kind of not using it as much, but I'm on Twitter too at Diverging_Clear_Podcast. It's my Twitter handle, I think. I might have messed that up. Let me verify. I have not been on Twitter as much as I used to. This is funny. I don't even know my Twitter handle anymore. Okay, I gave you the wrong. My Twitter handle is DivergingClear1 at DivergingClear1. So you can follow me on that. Also, I'm available on YouTube. That's probably hopefully where you're watching this one from. Like I said, thank you again for checking me out this year, man. It's been fun. It's been a challenging year, but a lot of times this has been my sort of my therapy to get through some of these transportation issues and some of these other issues going on. But one thing I can say about 2022, I told you how that rail labor negotiations was going to go. And it went exactly. I predicted it. I told y'all that's how it was going to go. I didn't like I didn't like the fact that it went that way, but I knew just from the administration, the tones, the different things that was going on, that they were going to screw the rail employees, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Everything played out. I told you it wasn't nothing going to happen until after the midterm, and after the midterm, that's exactly what happened. So I know a little bit about a little bit, so just give me credit for that. Anyway, thank you again for tuning in to the Diverging Clear Podcast. This was season number 2 finale, 2022 in review. Y'all stay safe out there. Keep wearing a mask, because don't forget, COVID is still a real thing. Get your boosters if you ain't got them. Thank you again for tuning in, man. Y'all stay safe. See y'all in 2023. Take care.
Diverging Clear is sponsored by EME Rail Solutions, LLC. We don't own rail cars, locomotives, or tracks, but if you do, we provide cutting-edge solutions to maximize your assets. Visit us at emerail.net to learn more. Diverging Clear is also brought to you by Three Kings Freight Brokerage, LLC. Visit threekingsfreightbrokeragellc.com to learn more about their services.